Hello, welcome to our midweek business news report. It's now time to bring you a feature on the show today. Now, the surge in staple food prices continue to skyrocket beyond analyst expectation, with its ripple effect and driving higher the overall consumer price index as reflected in the most recent inflation report, showing Nigeria's food inflation jumped from 20.57% in January this year to 21.79% just last month. The highest increases were recorded in the prices of bread and cereals, potatoes, yam and other tubers, meat, food products, fruits, vegetables, fish and oils, as well as fat. Now, the average Nigerian household spent around 57% of its income on food, and the figure is substantially higher for the over 90 million Nigerians who live well below the poverty line. According to some economists, until the government abandons its effort to cut down on food imports, the country is unlikely to see a real change. Hence, food inflation, now at its highest level since the year 2008, shows that food security is the country's overriding problem. Joining me now live in our Lagos studio to discuss this development and much more, I have the Chief Executive Officer of EnviroGrow Farms, Nkiru Opareke. Good to have you on the Breakfast Show today.
Thank you, Daniel. Good morning.
And it's Happy Women's Month. Thank you very much for your contribution within the agricultural sector. It's really commendable, and we can only say it's good to have you on the show this morning to attend to this pressing matter.
Thank you.
Now, when we look at the major factors that drive the price food surge, we've looked at insecurity in the country, the high cost of transportation, high cost of production, the lack of storage facilities. How critical are these issues if we have to stem the tide? Because just concluded yesterday, we had the MPC meeting, and it was one of the biggest concerns for the Central Bank of Nigeria to say, irrespective of all of the interventions they've had in the agri sector, the challenges are just still much bigger than the funds that are being thrown at. The problem.
As I've always said, these interventions, who are they really going to? We have to be truthful about these things. Because all the times I've read about interventions on the papers, or the pages of the newspaper, and I hear it on the news. But I can tell you, none of the farmers I talk with and none of the farmers in my group have gotten these interventions. So really, where are they going to? So when they do this, I always say this is government speak. Apart from those ones, even when you produce, logistics is a big problem in this country. Our roads are bad and the rains are coming, so it's going to even get worse. By the time somebody is bringing a truckload of tomatoes and before they reach Lagos from the north and he has only 20%, he's going to put up the price of all that 100% on the 20% because he has to make money.
And then we're also expecting that we are going to see better harvests come next month. You've already rightly said the rains are coming in. It's the road infrastructure at this point in time does not necessarily facilitate the logistic chain where we have to transport food now. What do you think we can do in the short term, exploring other alternatives at this point in time for transportation of food?
I have to correct some. We're not going to see better yields because the header farmer crisis is still ongoing. So lots of farmers still didn't go to the farm when they needed to plant. And apart from that, inputs were not readily available, fertilizers were not available and all that. So even the rains coming, and sometimes when the rains come, we also, many times we're having over flooding. Because now even NIMET has given some warning, there's going to be over flooding. And something like when you talk about even the livestock industry, look at eggs and chicken. At this time last year, a crate of chicken, farm gate was about 770, is 1,250.
Wow. And that also translates to the cost of fertilizers.
Everything has gone up by 30 to 40%. And the problem many times, the farmers that bear most of the losses, because when you tell people that prices have gone up, many of them are so price sensitive they walk away. When the farmer realizes that it's either I sell this at a loss or I don't sell at all, the farmer sells it. Then what happens? Next time, the farmer is not going to plant as much as because his income is reduced. So it directly translates to whatever comes into the market. Now,
also looking at the poor infrastructure we have at this point in time also throws the challenge of our storage facilities. We also have to look at price. And you've also made mention of the reality that farmers just have to sell at way cheaper prices because of the fear of post-harvest losses. How do we now translate this into a wealth of income instead of a problem that we have at this point in time?
The government has to attract private investors, but the government policies keep changing, so that doesn't attract private investors. And a lot of things, apart from post-harvest losses, we have to put in a lot of processes, because that's what happens to countries where they have processing. If you have excess of tomato, what happens? You just you just convert them into tomato puree.
Paste.
Or you can even put them as frozen tomato or tomatoes in a tin. But we don't have the infrastructure. We don't attract investors. We don't have power in a lot of places where we produce this thing. So how is an investor going to come? Dangote set up a tomato factory. What has happened to it? And with so much money from CBN, what has happened to it? The story has ended.
But how then do you think we can also have a formidable force from the players within the agri space now, forcing the hand of government or turning their sight to where the problems actually are? Because it seems for the Minister of Agriculture, the federal government, they have a certain ideology of what the problem is, and those on ground have a total different picture, like yourself.
As I've always said, they don't invite the farmers on the table when they're making the decisions. The minister sits with these technocrats who have never found one day in their lives and make up policies that govern me, that's always on the farm every day. It wouldn't work. There's a disconnect between what they know and what actually obtains on the farms. So till they get us on the table, we're not telling them to give us an appointment, but at least tell us to give you a feedback on exactly what you need. I can't give you Panadol if I don't know if you have a headache. You have to tell me where your problem is before I know what I'm giving to you. You can't sit down and legislate what you think I need, but without speaking to me, without inviting me to tell you exactly what I need. It's not going to work. There's a big disconnect between what the policymakers are doing and what we on the field are doing.
And this just connects to what the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria said yesterday. He said, well, there's the need for private-public partnership to be taken much more seriously. That interface has to come, and then the synergy has to come through. But now let's also look at the fact that we are also seeing imports coming into bear now. At the end of the day, the federal government is saying, well, let's force local production. But you cannot stop imports if your production capacity is still way below the demand level. But the optimism there is that we can do it, so why not start now?
Yeah, because people are starving. There's some things we haven't yet reached the capability to do, so you still have to allow imports. And sometimes imports actually force the people in the country to try to up their own games. But even when in things we're also producing, the cost of production is high. That many times, even when the imports come in, the imports are cheaper. What are you going to tell the person on the street? They shouldn't buy the one that's cheaper because they want to be nationalistic. Are you paying them nationalistic salary themselves? So it all comes down to what government is doing. Till the government does the right thing, put the right infrastructure in place, agriculture will still continue suffering. And that is a sector that employs 70% of your population. You're talking about youth unemployment. You need to empower them to be able to go back to the field.
Do you think we're going to see the price surge in food come down anytime soon? The CBN governor as well, once again in the NPC meeting just concluded yesterday, was optimistic that in the medium to short term, latest by the third quarter of this year, we'll see inflation rates come down. And this is largely driven by food inflation as well. Do you think we're going to see that come down?
I wish it was there. Let me ask him, what has ever gone up in Nigeria and come down?
Okay, now let's also talk about power infrastructure now. We look at processing as well. We look at storage. All of these chains have to rely heavily on power. We've not necessarily seen a change in terms of our power infrastructure, so we can't even say we have much more power supply in real terms.
Apart from the power, other agencies actually help to frustrate the processing sector. Let me give you an example. NAFDAC. If I'm processing rice, I need to get a special permit for 50 kg, different from 25, different from 10, different from 5.
Different permits?
Yes.
For the same production,
different license for the same different bags. But the USAID in the US, you get a license number for everything that comes out from that factory.
Irrespective of the valuation.
So once somebody runs the number, they know this rice is produced by this person in this factory. So you can imagine that process. So before people even start talking about power and the rest, the things you need even to get before you set up, the agencies are put in place, I think, to frustrate processing.
What's your forecast now for the rest of the year?
Well, everybody should try and have a little farm behind their house. But if they're expecting food prices to go down, it's not going to go down because the structures and things that need to be done haven't been done. So everybody should just tighten their belts, and we've gone back to 001 or 100 or whatever it was during those days.
That's not the best situation we can ever predict at this point in time. We just have to keep our fingers crossed and hope government takes necessary cues from all of the conversations going around. It's time to take action.
Yes,
Thank you very much for your time this morning, Nkiru Opereke, Chief Executive Officer of Envirogrow Farms. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and we can only wish you the best with your farm as well.
Thank you very much for having me here.